Now you want to save it. There. Where am I going to sit? I'm going to sit there. That's.
Oh, come on, don't do this to me. No. Right here. Where did I put this? Countdown space.
That lady.
Yeah. But on the Come on. Yeah. It's taking this so long. Right. Yeah. What's the problem? What is it? I think I need to fix that on the computer. When you're ready, let me know. Cause I need to fix that on the computer. It's not working, so I might need to set it up again. Sorry, it's okay when you're finished. Just let me know when you're done.
Finished. The slide was missing, but
Oh, okay. Great. That's great. Thanks. not working. Huh?
I unplugged it.
I can't get it working again for some reason. Hold on. I'm gonna go get him now. I could do a restart on this computer, but if you have everything open that you need, is everything saved? It's, yeah. Prefer if I left it, got him first, because I could do a restart on the computer. See if that makes it kick in again. Everything. I know. Is everything saved here? Yeah.
Yes, everything.
Right.
It's all saved on the local drive.
Right, I'm closing it down
Or the techno guy, you get the techno guy.
I'll get him. I think a restart hopefully will do it, but I know.
This is the last.
I know. I know. Come on. Wrong with this computer. Good God. Can't get this working again for some reason, so I can't. I think Damien had disconnected it to work on something, and then he connected it again. It was going to it just won't see. I can try to HDMI 1, HDMI 2. It's an HDMI connection, isn't it?
No.
Where's the presentation for this?
Where's that presentation?
It's in the local drive.
A local drive. Okay. So just check it's still.
I've saved everything on the local drive and I'll delete it.
I'm just gonna. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just gonna. Immediate. Okay. I'm just going to shut it down and restart both. To Mike. Then to Mike. Take. Hi Mike, are you free to meet me in a foil, please? Well. Thank you. So the setting is should I just restart on this side, which I've tried to do, but so it's already doing. Yeah. So back to the way it is digital link is down here. HDMI is up there. Yes. Sorry.
But
Oh, it is. Okay, so I just need, I think it's F5. Yeah.
How do I prevent the showing of that?
Secret stuff. Shutter should work. I will test it, but you should be able to close the shutter. Yeah, I think. We will test it. Yes. Yeah, I'll do it manually. Just to make sure. Just press again. Digital link. Sometimes when it gets disconnected and reconnected, you have 3 displays. Should you mirror them? That should be this one. Okay, so that's number 2, which means I can lose number 3.
How do you do the figures?
That's what I'm going to figure out. Okay, now if we go back to extend, because then we can get presenter view back. Because if it's trying to extend to multiple displays, it might not be finding it. Yeah. Yeah.
Because then they'll look with the mouse screen, they can write and that. So I think if we can just duplicate the.
I think we're going to have to. Yeah.
It's just. So now,
number 3. So shutter. And then just press again.
Yep.
And then press. You have to press return though, otherwise it comes up with that message each time.
so shutter. But when you see that message, you need to press it. Yeah. So. So when you're ready, shutter. Oh, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
So shutter. And we'll take a picture, and then you have the picture again, shutter again, but then and return. Yeah.
Shutter now while I
Okay.
Okay. Just one more time. Shutter. Shutter. Yeah. Okay.
Don't disappear until I get this loaded up and then I know it ready.
Then
Now I can use that. You might
And then he said, shutter.
So number 3, yeah. Good. And then return.
let's pick it up. It's sort of.
Okay, thanks very much. I think he'll use a pint or something. Sure, we'll sort that out. We'll use a pint or something. We'll need to sort that out. Oh yeah, a pint. I think we're saying, so we'll have to get you a pint. At some stage.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, just a relief. Just panicking there, so we were. I thought that was
No,
it.
that's fine.
Thought it was finished. Thanks a million.
Wow.
This one. Oh yes, it is indeed. Yeah, the others two. Just press once, I think. I don't hold them. Yeah, just press it once. I think that's it. Yeah. We tested them this morning. Hopefully they're still working. It takes a while to kick in.
Hello?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
No. Bạn năm năm anh
Oh, wag kasi. Okay. Grabe.
Đợi.
Conference calls, the president of the girl.
Game in.
Can Bạn vướng mình. Em muốn tâm đạn đừng Được Okay. Được. Con.
Hello, welcome to the map. Before we start with the AGM, it's want to go through housekeeping. So if there is a fire alarm, we will be alerted. We need to leave the room. There'll be 2 members of staff who will open the door for us, and we should leave the room, go to the right, and we shall meet in the park. So don't go left. We must all go right. Go down the stairs and go to the park. The toilets are on each floor. So there are a number of toilets you can access while you're in this room. Lunch will be at 12 o'clock on the ground floor. Okay? Okay, so welcome to you all. It's lovely to see the numbers of people that have attended today and how far you've travelled. Thank you so much for your ongoing support for the BDA, and I'm sure you'll have an enjoyable day. We've got a fantastic programme. I'd also like to welcome our ASLU rep. So if you have any questions about ASLU, if you speak to the ASLU rep, she'll be able to answer those questions for you. I'd just like to take a moment now to remember those people who are no longer with us. So if you can stand. Lovely, thank you. Please proceed. As I said, thank you so much for attending today and showing your support. There are a number of people who would love to be here with us and have sent their apologies in advance for their absence. We'd like to thank these people for the confidence of their being able to attend today. Okay, so now we go on to the minutes of last year's AGM in Manchester. The minutes are available on the BJ website. I'd like to ask you now to approve these minutes as being factual of the day's conversations. If you could now vote, raise your cards. In agreement. So for those of you that were present at the Manchester AGM last year, we need now a proposer and approver from those people who were in attendance. So we have our proposer. If you could provide us with your name. So Sam. Samba is our proposer from London. And we now need a seconder. Do we have a seconder from someone who is in attendance? Paul Minto, thank you both for being the proposer and approver of last year's minutes. I'm now going to hand over to Robert Adams, who's going to talk about the BJ's review of the last year, so 17-18. So Robert, can I speak to you to the front?
Thank you very much. This is just a summary of the activities of the BDA over the past year. We sent a delegation of young people to Australia in April 2017 for the WFD youth section camp, and they returned successfully and seemed to have a good time. You can see this is a photo of the British group who went. Another activity we engaged in. Next slide. We had more pledges for the BSL Charter. The Wolverhampton Council pledged to level 2 to follow the BSL Charter, and we also received funding from the Big Lottery funding, and that was for access and inclusion in Wales. We move on to the next slide. There's been a number of, we have received funding for, specifically for a dementia project, and we have a project in Northern Ireland and in Scotland. We know it's very important to support deaf people who are suffering from dementia. And so this funding enables us to do that. We also, as you may be familiar, the UN, the United Nations, has a convention on rights for people with disability, and people who sign up to that need to make sure that they follow those rights. So we attended a convention in Geneva where people talk about whether they're following the rights or not. And the British government submitted their report, and the EA submitted a shadow report to talk about the reality of the implementation of the UNCRPD. We know it's not a rosy picture as the government portrays. And so we were able to challenge some of the statements that were made in the British government report. You know, Terry Riley was our delegate there, so thank you very much. We feel that that was a very successful political activity. The World Federation of the Deaf, the WFD, has a Sign Language Week. It was the first International Week of the Deaf, which announced the UN International Day of the Sign Languages. So that improves the status and the profile of sign language generally, which is useful for us. And the British government had the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Deafness, the APPG. It's a shame, of course, most of us would prefer it to be the APPG Deaf, but it is the APPG on Deafness. And we sent a representative to engage in some of the discussions and to lobby the government in terms of thinking about a British Sign Language Act for the whole of the UK. At the same time, during the Sign Language Week, the Scottish Government announced their national plan. We know that we have the BSL Scotland Act, but having that law in place is not sufficient. The government plan actually details how they will implement that. The Scottish BDA have been involved in making sure that there's a strong deaf presence in ensuring that the government plan suits the needs of deaf people. So I think those are all the activities we want to draw your attention to. I'll hand back to our chair, Alex.
Thank you, Robert. If you do have any questions in regards to our accident lecture, please feel free to approach our staff, and there's also a WFOID stand downstairs where you can gather further information, so please feel free to have the treasurer here now to talk to us about his report for 1780. Michael Puglia, please.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kyriakides. I'm the treasurer of the British Deaf Association, and I'm here to go through the figures. And I'm pleased that everybody is very keen to get their seat positions all correct. And that means to me that you're very keen to see the figures as we go through the slides. So I just want to go through the financials for the charity, which were published. So these are the accounts for the years ending, the year ending 31st of March 2018. So she's looking back, and the figures that you will see are the figures you'll see in your annual report, annual review, which you have with you. So they're taken from there. The figures have been audited by the auditors and has an unqualified, or what we say, a clean audit report. Okay. So I just want to go through a number of slides, just summary slides, and again at the end, you're welcome to ask me any questions on the figures and the financial performance or position of the British Association. So, the first slide is just the income graphs, and you can see that in the year 1718, our income did go down marginally, just by under £90,000. You can see that it's largely to do our project income has reduced, and that's largely because, again, it's becoming very competitive to get grants and project grants awarded to not just the BDA, but with the organisations in the sector. It is becoming a very competitive marketplace with less funding available, unfortunately. The decrease with project income has been compensated slightly by legacies, and you can see that you can see from the graph in 17-18 the legacy figure was marginally higher. £529,000 in last year's account, so that helped the position a bit. In terms of the budgeting, we had budgeted that this was going to happen, so this was largely in plan. The reforecast predicted that it would be a much harder year for us and again, I would say other charities as well. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. And just this is quite a good graphic to show how the income is raised and for what purposes. So again, you can see the largest slice of the pie is the donations and legacies, and then you've got the other areas of, again, project grants or purposes, and so you can see that deaf children, youth and families and deaf access and inclusion are the other areas where we've got our funding for, and then lower amounts for sign language at 7.9 and deaf community advocacy. Next slide, please. So, with expenditure, of course, we anticipated that it was going to be much more competitive, but we were focused on making sure that our financial position was reasonable under the circumstances. So, as a consequence, our costs we had to reduce our costs, which obviously on one hand is good because it helps our financial performance, but on the other hand, it's not so good because it means that we can do less. We have to be doing less. We can't spend as much as we would normally we would like to. So in the year 17-18, we spent 1.66 million. That is a lot less than 16-17, where we spent 1.88 million. So we spent £220,000 less. So again, accountants always like to see spending much less. It's the normal for accountants to think this way. But I actually see it as a two-way thing. On one hand, it's good we're spending less. On the other hand, it means that we're not doing as much as we the activities we want to. So it is a thing of both, actually. And where we're spending our money, again, it's largely projects. And again, you can see the reduction in expenditure is through projects. So again, we would like to spend more on projects, of course. But again, it's the reality of having to try and balance the books, unfortunately. The next slide. And this is the pie chart for the expenditure. So again, deaf children, families is the largest spend, and then second is deaf access and inclusion, and then third is BSL media, governance, and then sign language, just under 11%. Okay, so these are the financials. These figures you'll see in the annual review. And so we've talked about the income being 1.57 million and the expenditure of 1.66 million. So overall, we had a deficit of 87,000, which is better. And from last year, we were planning. So what the plan was to have, we had large deficits in previous years, and the plan was to reduce those deficits year on year, and we're doing that. So we got Howard lost 87,000, or 88,000 rather, and so that, although that's not desirable, it's certainly better performance, and that's what we plan to do. For this financial year, finishing 18-19, our objective is to really break even, and then moving on from there is to make surpluses, and there are reasons for that. Okay. So you can see with 89,000, there were no pension movements in the year because there was no valuation. So every 3 years, there's an evaluation of the pension scheme, and depending on the performance of the stock markets, the valuation just sort of dictates how much more we have to pay, or if less, actually, if the valuation works in our favour. So we are unfortunately in the pension fund, which we're going to shortly. We are a hostage to the financial markets. And this is the financial position, this is the balance sheet. Again, you'll see this in the annual review. So we have our we have fixed assets, which is just under 6,000, very small. Our current assets, which is our debtors and our bank balances together, that's just under 1.4 million. Our liabilities, excluding the pension, is £150,000. And as you can see, the amount we have to pay for the pension scheme in our accounts is going to be just over £1 million. Because in the previous years, there was no requirement to put the pension scheme on the accounts. But from last year, we've had the auditing standards have changed, or the accounting standards have changed. So now all organisations must put their pension assets and liabilities in the accounts. So on one hand, it's good. It shows very clearly what needs to be paid, but at the same time, it's sobering because you can see that there is a large liability still to pay off. So it's just over £1 million to pay. So the funds of the British Association is just over £190,000, and it's split between restricted funds. These are project grants where we get money in and we have to spend it on that project. Then there's designated funds, which is money that we are setting aside for purposes of £106,000. General funds, which is just under £131,000. And then we have a negative figure of pension reserve of £700,000. I will talk about that when we get to another slide, specifically about the pension fund. Okay. So again, the funds of the British Association is £190,000 at 31st of March 2018. Okay, so the pension fund, and we'll talk about it now. Okay, so this is the famous colourful graph that we see every year, so basically it shows you how much overall we have to pay, and you can see the overall amount that we have to pay is 1.726 million, I think at the very top. But then obviously we've been making payments. We make payments every single year to the tune of about £130,000. And basically, what happened? If you go back to, although it's not actually explicit here, in the slide before, you saw an amount within credit, just 1.5 million, 1.05 million. We had to actually pay. That was in the balance sheet, and so that was the liability in March 2018. And basically, it's that amount of 1.05 million is split in two. Part of it was already saved up for it. So 352,000, and you can see that here, is in our bank account. We've earmarked it, and that's ready to go into the pension fund. So we've saved up 352,000. The balance, which we do need to save up for, so it's not in our bank account, and we need that, and it is 700,811, which is also the figure you saw at the very bottom of the balance sheet. So this is the amount that we need to basically save up for, and the way we can do that is to make surpluses. So this is why in future years, so this year we want our accounts to be a break-even budget, effectively. But in future years, the challenge for the British Association is to make surpluses, so in order to start to pay off the gap of £700,000. So it's going to be a challenge, but when we spoke to the pension trust, they told us within all the charities that they looked after, we're in a much better position than many other charitable organisations. So because we're making our payments as they got due, we've got money saved up already, but obviously we still need to do work in order to slowly pay that figure off to get to 1.7 million at the very top. Of course, as I mentioned, the financial markets also dictate everything, so it may be that the figure of 1.7 million may be 1.65 million, or it could be the other way. If the financial markets go against us, then it can work the other way. Of course, if we were lucky enough to have a cheque of £700,000 today, then we could then go to the bank, put the money in the bank, and then ring the pension fund and say we can pay it off. And then at that point, as you can see on the left side of the slide, it's locked. We can lock it and we can say that's fine, and then there's no more obligation. So on one hand, we've still got a way to go in order to pay this this liability for the pension fund. But again, unfortunately, and I say this every year, it's a moving target because the financial markets, when the valuation happens, it will change. So when I'm here next year, there will be a valuation that will take place shortly, so you'll have new figures to look at. Next slide. Questions? Yes. Are there any questions on this presentation?
If you have questions, if you could come to the front, please. If we do have questions for the Treasurer in relation to the financial situation and also the pension fund as well, if you could, you see the red line here that I'm pointing out now, just to the left as you look to the front. Then if you could queue up there, and there's a red mark on the floor here, and if you could stand in that red mark, because that way people in the live stream can see you as well. So we have somebody, do you want to go to the line first? I'm not keen on squeezing those red line, but anyway. Morning everybody, my name's Linda Richards. I have a couple of questions. One is related to the pension fund. Sorry, can you please do step against me, strict about where you need to stand. You can ask me which way to go next. Sorry, let me gather my thoughts. In terms of the pension fund, sorry, could you move into my sideline? Otherwise I feel like I need to look at you. So, in terms of the figures that we've got on the paper, so it looks like we're due to keep paying up until 2025, and is that then us done? I mean, it does seem that the figure keeps increasing year on year, and I'm worried that it seems to be like a perennial debt that the BDA may be obligated to. So how many people do we have drawing against the pension fund who are previous staff of the BDA? And is that okay? So is this something which will be paid off by 2025, or is this a liability which seems to be in perpetuity? And then in terms of the bank, we have 190,000. Does that mean that's what we have as a reserve fund, as it were, or do we have an alternative reserve fund? That's probably the questions I want to ask, at least for now.
Okay, good question. So the first thing is that this scheme, pension fund scheme, is locked. So there's no any British Association employee that joins, they go in a different pension fund. So it's not which is a defined contribution. So the defined contribution scheme is where, as you probably know, it's about the risk is with the employee or the person making the contributions. So all the current BDA staff are on the scheme where they effectively take the risk of their contributions. So the variation is not so much with the number of staff in this staff in the scheme. It's just literally to do with the amounts invested and the financial markets. That's the variation. And I would also say one thing. Which I said I have to correct myself slightly. The gap is £700,000, as I mentioned in the slide. If we were to get a cheque of £700,000 today and put it in the bank, in actual fact, we couldn't pay it off because the valuers have two prices. So they'll say this is the amount due on the valuation, but there's a buyout price. And so normally the buyout price is higher. So even if we were to have £700,000 today, we'll bring them up and say, oh, great, we've got £700,000. They'll say, sorry, the buyout price is X, which will be higher. So then there's a decision to be made. If you're lucky enough to have a big donation or a legacy, then we would have to find out what the buyout price was if you were inclined to pay it off. So that's the unfortunate thing as well. So some organisations, even if they have the money, they don't actually pay it off because the buyout price is so high, they actually say we might as well just keep paying. It's cheaper to keep paying. And sometimes the gap is quite wide between the buyout price and the value in the account. It's because it depends on the market as well. So that's to remember. In terms of the £190,000 that was mentioned, £190,000 is not the bank balance, it's the funds. It's basically the overall wealth of the charity, including that sort of £100,000 we have to pay. So our bank account has at the moment £700,000 or £800,000. So we have a very soluble bank account, fortunately. But the 190 is just the wealth. It's the sum of the reserves. So you have your restricted reserves, you have your general reserves, you have your designated reserves, and then you have the pension deficit of 700,000. And if you sum all those together, including the negative 700,000, the figure is 198,000. And it's an important point because 190,000 is basically the wealth of at that point in time. We take a photo of the organisation at the 31st of March 2018. The wealth of the charity, including the pension deficit, is £190,000. So I hope that answers your question.
Can I ask a further question or two? I do remember last year I asked about the pension, and you told me then that the buyout, we couldn't really buy the pension costs up because it would be so expensive. Someone said you pay a fund paying it off early, so it would be 700,000 plus whatever the additional increment is for buying out of the scheme. So I'm just wondering, what reserves does the BDA have? How many months in reserve do we have as a kind of going concern?
It's a difficult one to answer because, well, 190,000 isn't a lot. The reserve level is low at that point in time. But remember, the thing that gets where it gets a little bit complicated is that all of the figures in the balance sheet, and it may be worth. Could we go back to the balance sheet slide? I think it would be useful just to remind ourselves of the figures. Okay, thank you. Yes, you can see the wealth of the organisation is £190,000. But our auditors will say to us that all of the figures are things that can be sold in a day, or received in a day, or paid in a day. The only thing that you don't pay in a day is the pension liability. So if this was kind of like a three-dimensional slide which had time as a dimension, then the 1.05 million is actually over the sort of 5 or 6 years. So we put the whole amount in, but obviously because we're paying £140,000, £130,000 we're not actually having to pay that off. So anyway, we've got time to pay off that. But by putting it all in, it shows that the funds are quite lean actually. But it's showing the worst case scenario. That's by putting the whole liability in, even though we don't have to pay that until over 5 or 6 years in total.
I do have more questions, but maybe I'll meet you later, maybe ask you directly. Good morning, everyone. My name's Jeff. I'm Jeff Drew. I'm not sure if you're the right person or to answer this question, but in terms of the BDA as an organisation and debt and finances, if you think historically, I have noticed that on a yearly basis it does seem that our funds are kind of decreasing. So that does worry me. How can we try and increase our funds rather than decrease our funds? Because obviously then if it's the number's already always going down, that's a worry. How do we resolve that?
Also, numbers are very important point. There's two issues here. You can see from the graphs that, quite rightly, the gentleman has seen that the income has gone down. But at the same time, our deficits have also gone down. So if we went back to 3 years ago, I think the deficit was much more higher. So we're managing and reducing deficits. And as I said, our target for this financial year is to try and, as far as possible, break even, and then in future years make surplus. And the reason why we have no choice but to do this is to actually try and have money and surpluses to pay off the pension fund. So that's the first answer to the question. The second thing is that we are trying very hard in a very competitive market to make as many important and quality applications to funders, and it is a very competitive environment with a smaller pool of funds to apply for. So we are trying our best, but we're about to commence our budget process for next year, and again, it's going to be one where we're going to have to model profits. So even if funds are difficult to get, we have no choice, I think, really, but to make our business model work. That may mean cuts, unfortunately, as a consequence, but we need to also balance the books, as I said, we shouldn't really be in a position of making many more deficits at this stage. Of course, the legacies are always great for any charity, and we benefited from that as well. But we can't rely on those because there's something, there are things we can't plan for. If the legacy comes in at £300,000, then that is very welcome, and that will really help the organisation. But in terms of budgeting, you can't budget for those sorts of events. So we can't rely on other men in terms of budgeting. So the next couple of months we'll be working on a budget for next year, and it will be one where we need to make surpluses, and also we are trying very hard, our fundraising department is trying very hard to try and get the income and get as much positive income as we can. And it's obviously not just about balancing the books, it's also getting content in to do the great things that the BDA do every year anyway. So all those things are very important. So we'll do our best to deliver a surplus for next year.
Maybe you've already answered the question, and I don't. Maybe I just need to reiterate a question just to make sure that I'm clear. I know that we have received funding for the lottery, for example, whatever. But in terms of thinking about the money that we got, I know lots of people are thinking we've got this liability for the pension. Why are we still paying that? And people are a little bit incredulous about that. So I'm wondering what the response is to why are we paying this pension year on year? What the hell's that?
Yeah, so I think we are obliged to. It's about obligation, obviously respect. So the obligation is that we have a pension scheme, and legally we have to pay this. And of course, one needs to then think about obviously the staff, the ex-members of staff that work at the BDA, and they are entitled to get their pensions, and we must respect that. So yes, I mean, the situation, our financial situation would be much better if we didn't have any liability, of course. But of course, legally we have to pay this, and it's the right thing to do, I think, to pay their pensions after their victims result
I don't think that answers my question really. Sorry, maybe my point is, when we get the grants, there's lots of grant, and we have those grants. and those grants won't pay for that liability. I can see we have restricted funds for projects, but that doesn't really help me in terms of thinking about how that money can be used or how we get a surplus when we're applying for grants. That's what the BDA wants. So my question is really simple. Are we able to, I know we have to pay the staff, I know we have to pay the pension, but in terms of grants that we get, we can't be the only organisation. Maybe this is a concern in general about how do we resolve getting funding, especially in a very difficult funding situation. How do we make sure that we get funds in, and how do we have them as unrestricted funds?
So, thank you. I understand the question. So just to the gentleman's question really was about, and he's absolutely right. So many of our project grants, and more the case, is where a central government or lottery, they would say the project is for a specific purpose, like debt route supply, and you have to spend money on that purpose. There is a small amount for overheads and staff, but that usually is quite modest. It's not a great deal of money. But then, of course, we understand that, and of course, the balance of that goes to pay does great work that we can spend on the projects that we are applying for funding. So in that regard, there is little scope. I agree for the pension fund to be paid off through projects, but there are other areas of income that we can use to pay off. So we receive donations and other aspects. There are other areas of income where either the grant is not so the terms are not so restricted, or it's just an unrestricted income. Sometimes you get a consultancy income from work that's required. So those sorts of bits of income can then be used to pay off the pension fund. So although the point is still well made, that when we receive a restricted grant, it goes in restricted funds, and it's greatly received if we can spend it on all the things that the BDA are great at supporting projects, etc. But there is little scope to pay, smaller scope to pay for things like overheads, management, pension funds. So when we do applications, we have to bear that in mind, because if for example, there's a grant that is very small amount of overhead we can earn from it, say 5%, although it is a really great grant, if it's administratively burdensome, then we may think about actually not taking it, because we've actually got to do something else that actually helps the organisation as well. So it's a point well made. But to answer the question, there are other income streams that can fund the pension fund.
Hello everybody. I'm just thinking about income for the BDA, and it does seem that principally we get money from legacies and from projects which keep the BDA going, which obviously we're very grateful for, better I think than some years in the past potentially. In terms of thinking about other income streams, and one of the things just occurred to me in Christmas, we saw the Huawei app, and it was signing, and it was great to see that Christmas advert in relation to the company. I can't remember what that company's called. Right. Does that mean that the BDA will have some financial gain from this app? I'm just interested. And is that an income stream? Do we get royalties from that? I know for many years the BDA has been very generous in supporting people, events, organisations, but not necessarily gained any money from these activities. And obviously the BDA needs to think about potential income streams. So hopefully that's clear. Is that a source of royalties, and are there other income streams that we can have like that?
I would have to defer that question to Damien, I think, because that's something I'm not
Huawei, their son the name of that company. Any donations, or we're still waiting to receive income from that agreement. We actually give restricted funds, and that's money which is spent on a children's project. It can't be used, for example, divested into pension funds or into other costs. And we had an agreement with them that any money that we got from Sign Stories would be supporting children's projects. So we're waiting to see how that develops, and we don't know what the final figure will be at the moment. It's still ongoing, and so that's running until Easter. I was told about 3 weeks ago that I don't know who we use the sign for China. The Chinese company will have obviously Chinese New Year in February, so we're waiting to see what happens there, because that's a very important time culturally. But any funds that we get will be restricted, and they can't be used for other general running costs or pensions. Do we have any more questions? We have a question from James Terry Ryan. I mean, some of you may think, oh, I'm retired, but I'm back. I just have a few points that I want to clarify. One of which is the BBA board, I know, has been looking into the pension scheme for many years and has sought legal advice in regards to the payout or not. I mean, in previous years, it has been very expensive to do so. In theory, you could dissolve the BBA and then establish a new organisation and then divert the legacies. And as we've said, a large percentage of our income is from legacies, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to be in receipt of the legacies. So we have looked at a variety of different solutions where we paid out the pension scheme, just to share that information with you. That wasn't something that seemed important. When we talk about the BBA, when we talk about the Board of Trustees, if we remember Dot Miles, she asked us, what do you do for the BBA? It's not a criticism. I mean, it's something we also need to consider ourselves as well. How much is membership of the BBA? Nothing. So we thank people who made up legacies for the BBA, but we need to think about what are we doing for the BBA as well. You need to think how you can support the BBA. You need to really look yourself and think about, I'm a life member, but I'm happy to pay to donate some money, and are we also in positions where we can do that too? Is £20 a membership as a pensioner? For an association I'm a member of, but I don't pay anything for the BBA. But both of these organisations are important to me, so again, we need to think about if the BBA is of value to you, then when we get to that point in the AGM, then we can change and make sure that membership fees are reinstated. It's the AGM that has the power, not the Board of Trustees, and if we're worried about money, we need to think about being generous towards the organisation. I know we see that there's 700,000, but we know that the money's already there. In one way, I know that the board has been trying to not worry about the pension per se. We know that we have money in reserves and there's 700,000, but we want to think about other ways that we can raise money. There are many organisations, many charities which have pension deficits, and they don't necessarily have the money. They only have 1,500 quid in their account when you actually rectify all of those accounts. So it's beholden upon the BBA to be responsible to their retired members and also to make sure that we have enough funds and we do this in a sensible way. I have several questions. I don't know what the agenda is. Sorry, I was question. I wasn't clear on when in the agenda is an appropriate time for me to ask questions. Now, my question in relation to, or what's the format? Is it in relation to finance? There are other questions I want to ask.
So this section of the day is to talk about finances. If you have any additional questions on different topics, they're not to be asked now.
With respect, as this is a members' conference, members surely have the right to ask questions of the board. So surely I have the right to ask a question. I mean, I don't want to be critical, but this feels like a very kind of hearing style of doing an AGM. We're trying to encourage people to understand they have the right to ask questions at the AGM, not the workshop at the AGM. So just asking if there is a space on the agenda to ask questions. Oh, just in response at the moment, no. So I would ask if maybe you can have some kind of consideration to allow an opportunity to ask questions. And that's why many of us have come. I came to the AGM in Manchester and I asked the same question and asked members to think about paying the membership fee again. And I know that we felt that would raise money because that means as members we will support the organisation. Many of us have been members of the BDA for many years, but people still expect it to be free. Come on, we said at the last AGM, we want to bring the membership fee back. So I'm asking again if we can have the membership fee back. I mean, I think, as Terry said, we need members back. We need people to pay to become members, and then they can give us a clear information about what they want us to do. But we do need to increase our membership. Otherwise, we're in terminal decline as an organisation. And we need to have an opportunity to ask questions. And what is the BDA doing for us? That's the question. What is it as an organisation? Could you go back to the pie chart, please? Am I standing in the appropriate place? The expenditure pie chart. This one, yes. Hello everybody, I'm Jeff from Wales. In terms of the pie chart and what we're income and expenditure, it seems to be there's quite a lot of focus on projects. But the actual money spent for all members is quite small. Publication, membership and communications, just 9.7%. So if the BDA is wanting to encourage more people to become members, but there's lots of focus on projects rather than membership-focused activity, then it may be that we're not able to get more members. I think lots of members start to feel that the BDA is not really a members' organisation because they've forgotten about the membership. You're wanting to have more members, but that doesn't, you're not putting your money where your mouth is. And again, in terms of campaigning, that doesn't seem to be a large expenditure either. So if campaigning is something which you do for all of the members, projects are important, but obviously they focus on very specific sectors. So if members are wanting support from the BDA, how do we get that? I mean, I know income is not unproblematic, but my question is, are there any funds designated for the membership? Should we have a designated fund for all of the deaf community in the UK, irrespective of their age or their needs? how do we fit the needs of the deaf community as a whole, rather than just focusing on project work? That's my question.
So I can answer some of your questions, and if not, Damien can assist. So, I mean, again, this is the question the gentleman has made is about obviously the membership fee, and the crux of it is should the membership fee be a fee for services or a donation, or both, effectively. Because of course, if you were to increase the cost of providing services, and of course providing services for its membership is great, and I'm in favour for that. But by doing so, then your donation that will come in from membership would then be used to pay for the expenditure of the increased services. So then that doesn't have a big impact on increase to try and generate a surplus for charity, because whilst we're getting membership income in, if we increase our membership services, then it's money coming in, then money leaving the bank account. So then the position becomes just neutral from doing so. And that could be that could be an answer, but I think the big picture in terms of finances is to try and to make surpluses on all our activities, whether it be membership or other aspects. So that's the first thing I would say. Yes, we are. The second thing is absolutely we are currently a very much project-focused organisation, and this is the way of the world. That core grants, are things, unfortunately, are things in the past. We can only go for project funding, and again, the projects are great, etc. But obviously, you can only spend it on those project activities. So we are, our hands are tied in that regard. The only other area about that I may want to mention, and Damien may correct me, is that we do have in our funds, in restricted funds, area deaf association restricted funds. So they are sort of local pots of money that can be spent locally, but they're quite small, I think, actually. But that's the only areas where at the moment where money can be spent in sort of local, earmarked for local purposes.
That was the last question. If you're wanting to ask further questions, you can talk to our treasurer later. He will be around, so feel free to ask the questions directly.
Okay, so we're going to look at the WFD and the EUD. We've got an update provided by 3 people. So I'm going to talk about the WFD, and then Abigail went to the First Women's Conference, and then Terry will be coming up finally. And the EYD, the Deaf Women's Conference, we've all participated in, and there's information available on Facebook. We've produced blogs, and it's also available on the website. So we're going to keep it quite short and sweet, and you can approach us at any point during the day to speak to us about each event and our work within each organisation in more detail. So if I speak about the EUD, I get to Vienna in Austria, and I went with staff member, I went with Robin Ash.
I don't have.
Because the event theme was about accessibility. And then if we look at the BSL charter and how we improve access because of that. So that's part of Robin's role, which is why he came along with me. So we went along and realised that really it was an exchange of information. They will be able to talk to us about events that they were holding, the work they were doing, and we could share information about the work we were doing. So we stayed there for a number of days, spoke with people represented from a variety of countries, and majority of the conversations that we were approached about were about Brexit and whether that would mean an end to our work in Europe. I think Linda and Terry attended events in Malta with a motion, and the motion's now been held and needs to be resubmitted. And within that, we need to add a section about EUD. Beforehand, it was ECF, ERS. We were the founder members of that, so hopefully membership will honour our role within that, because we don't want to be in the same position as Norway, Switzerland, Luxembourg and Iceland, whereas they're not allowed to have EU membership. They're still members of EUD, but are sidelined somewhat. So those discussions haven't taken place as yet. The assembly's in May, so in the meantime we're in a bit of a position where we're unsure as to what's going to happen going forward. Of course, it's always beneficial attending and seeing what's happening in Europe in terms of the work that's being done. But you as members will need to consider about how you access information. So we have been posting blogs on Facebook and we've had comments received on those blogs. But we'd like you to let us know about how you want that done in the future. Is it Instagram? Is it Twitter? How would you like access to information about the EUD? Because it's not just trustees who are members of that organisation, it's you also. So please do contact the head office and let us know about what information you would like and how we can improve access to that. So I'm now going to hand over to Abigail. Hi everyone, so I went to Lente in Spain with Sala and met with 18 different countries. There was 33 women from each of those countries, and we focused on 3 strands: violence that's faced by women, women's health, and barriers faced by women, because there are services available to women in terms of their health, but it's about their access that's limited to that. And thirdly, we spoke about organisations and the variety and how diverse they were and how we could access them. So some countries didn't have services for domestic violence. At one country's presence, there was UK, so Hope and Spain has a service as well. So we looked at how we could improve that going forward. So we were there for 2 days. This was followed by a conference. We had various women's keynote speakers about technology, health, access, and a variety of other topics. Fantastic time spent there. Lots of conversations to moderate, as I said, in regards to those 3 topics. And we then had a declaration. There was a human rights for women, with the addition of girls, but because of the linguistic access required by deaf women and girls, there was a Valencia declaration for deaf women and girls. If you're not interested in getting more information like that, I can do that for you. Extremely interesting and useful information that I'm going to share in required.
Oh, X marks the spot. In terms of the WFD, I know many of you are aware that it's an important organisation. Some of you may be less clear why, but the WFD has quite a lot of influence on our future lives in terms of deaf children, access to sign language. So it's a very valuable organisation. And I think the UK, in lots of ways, isn't actively supporting them, unlike other countries, with the EUD as well, for example. But with the WFD, we had the recognition of the International Sign Language Recognition. That was a direct consequence of the UN Convention. So we have 1 day recognised for sign language, International Sign Language Day. So, we have World AIDS Day, World Women's Day, this is World Sign Language Day. It was launched, it was the first time it happened. So the goal is to actually make sure we have a higher status. We know the President, Colin Allen, is also the president of the IGA, the International Disability Alliance, and so obviously he uses sign language and has an interpreter, and that's a very visible way of raising our presence on the agenda, 24/7, as somebody who uses sign language. So in terms of the UN Convention, it's powerful, but what do we mean by the Convention? Well, the Convention, the UK is a signatory to the UN Convention. There's been lots of discussions and arguments with the government, but we know that it's about improving the quality of life of deaf children and deaf adults. And lastly, I'll just say, in Paris, we have the WFD Congress in July. There will probably be around 4,000 deaf people from the world. We have the General Assembly, which is for delegates. And then we have a three-day conference where we have speakers from a variety of different places, talking about education, employment, use of sign language in a variety of different settings. And there's a variety of different fora that you can be engaged in. So hopefully you're planning, as a group to go by a coach or whatever, get to Paris, it's not that far. Go to King's Cross, get on the Eurostar, £75, Bob's your uncle. It's worth being there if you have deaf children or hearing children. There's lots of information. It's a great opportunity to attend for your children as well. So that's enough from me. If you want to have more information, you can tap me in the shoulder.
Abigail, there you are. Thank you, Abigail, for your time at the conference representing the BDA, and Terry, thank you for your ongoing support for the WFD. And your term finishes shortly, doesn't it? In the summer. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to our special announcements which take place at every AGM. So actually we'll be first to announce the first announcement.
Hello, my name's Ashley, and I'm a BDA board member, BDA trustee. And so our special announcements that happen on an annual basis. This year I'll be announcing the Francis Megan Award, and this is for somebody who's worked tirelessly and campaigned for the deaf community. We know that often people who work really hard don't get the recognition they deserve, and so this is a formal award to recognise the work that they've done. So this is the speech that I have. I'll give a summary of all of their achievements. This year, in 2019, it's a great year because it's 100 years since the death of Francis Megan. So this is the centenary year. Francis Megan achieved many things for the BDA, or the BGDA as it was at that time. And the award that we give in his name is to honour somebody who's done that work. And actually the award we give the awardee this year is somebody who's very similar to Francis Megan. We think it's a beautiful tribute to Francis by bestowing this award upon this person. There's somebody who's worked tirelessly campaigning locally, nationally, on a European and international level. They've been highly politically motivated. That's their area of interest, principally. This person has written a variety of reports, evidence-based reports, collected evidence to support those reports, so that he can campaign for the rights of deaf people, and the way that we can support those campaigns, of course, is with well-researched evidence. The reports are innumerable over the years. In terms of the UN Convention, the UN CRPD, he's worked at a local level, he's worked and petitioned in Parliament on a national level. The awardee is somebody who's not only campaigned for deaf people, but also for disabled people as well. He founded the Liberal Disability Association and has been fundamental in its development. And he is affiliated to the Liberal Democrats political party and has been involved in the disability section for many years and is still involved. I could go on and on listing his achievements. But I'm sure by now you have a clear idea of who he is. A very amazing person for their achievements. Very similar with Francis, as Francis Bacon was, putting the deaf community first. For his passion. So this year we award the Francis Bacon Award to David. Congratulations. Very naughty. I was thinking, who's... Oh, it was me. My goodness. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. I would like to thank you all, because obviously without you I wouldn't have been able to do all of the work that I've done. So this award is for all of us. The deaf community is a collective. We do these things together. Over the years, in terms of government, they try to divide us, divide and conquer so that we can lose our voice. And we rebutted those attempts and worked together. Over the last 35 years, I've been involved in politics. And for the last 25 years, it's been a tricky environment. We know there's been significant changes in the last 10 years. So this award is for all of us, and all of the work we do together. In the future, what I'd love to see is a sign language act. I'm sure you all agree. It's something that we can't stop fighting for. Once we've got a BSL act that covers the whole of the UK, I think that will help achieve Francis Bacon's vision. We know that Francis Bacon knew that sign language was important, and secondly, exactly, education. We have to not lose heart. We need to make sure that the heart controls what we do in terms of our passions, but we think through these things clearly. And that way we can have a good legacy for ensuing generations. So thank you very much for this award. Before you go, there's one more important thing to add. Don't forget, actually, you need to stand in the right place. David has not only been doing all of this political activity, but he has also been very important for the BDA. He's been the treasurer, he was the CEO, he's supported the BDA at a management level, so supported members locally and nationally. So it's not just your broad political activity, but thank you very much for all of your support for the BDA as well. Thank you. Very welcome.
We're now moving on to the Chair's Award. So the Chair considers who the best person would be, but I've spoken to other members of the board and they're all in agreement as to who would achieve this award. So Ashley mentioned Francis Bacon and the work he done, and this person we've chosen, the Chair's Award. As you know, there was two main areas Francis was extremely determined to achieve, which was the support and protection of BSR, and also education. So the reduction in the number of deaf teachers, teachers of the deaf, and the impact that will have on deaf children. So as I said, he wanted to protect and ensure that BSR had strengthened going forward. And he believed by protecting BSR that we would support those going forward, we'd have a legacy, and we want to continue that legacy going forward. And the South West of England, there are a number of deaf parents, deaf brothers who, the person who wins this award is from the South West. Started as a factory worker, progressed from there, became a well-known linguistic. Over 5 years, I managed to influence a number of areas, trying to protect BSL within those locations. This began in 1980. Do you remember the BSL TA, teacher training at Durham University? This person was a student, then became a teacher. I'm like, there's something about this person. Because especially in deaf people think, oh, I can't do that, but you need that influence, you need that role model. Dartmouth saw this person's potential, offered the encouragement, got a number of BSL teachers into training because the standard of BSL needed to increase. It was about teaching in the appropriate method, the correct way. And do you remember the black dictionary that we had? She was involved in supporting the initiation of that book. And it was very much, oh, what's BSL linguistics? And she supported with the imagery for that.
She also worked at City University and she worked at DCAB, as well as working with Ben C, Rachel Sutton-Spence. We know now in Durham that BSL teaching is not something which is taught now. That's not something that Frances has been involved in the latter days of her career. We know that she focused on sign language linguistics. And I'm sure many of you, well, I can remember the BSL receptive and productive assessment for children developed at City University, not for adults. We know that if children have speech problems, hearing children have speech problems, they have diagnostic tests. And this was a diagnostic test which was developed for deaf children so that you can make sure you can have appropriate educational interventions. It's very important that you teach how to use this assessment, and also that means that you can have better communication in a family. If communication doesn't happen well in the family, we know that there can be mental health issues, and many deaf children can be language deprived. This person has campaigned tirelessly for 35 years to ensure that doesn't happen. This person and I went to the WFD in Australia in 1999 and jointly presented talking about the fact that hearing people have the choice to go to interpreter training, but deaf people often don't have the choices in the training they can go to. And so when we think, how many qualified deaf interpreters and translators there are now compared to the past, but that really happens because of some of the initiatives that this person was involved in. They retired last year. Sorry, they retired in 2013, but were still very active. But I know that they kind of stopped much of their activity from last year. Now, it's the centenary of the death of Frances Magan, and we're still celebrating this year. And this is really thanks to this person believing in, honouring the belief that Frances Magan had in BSL. I'm sure if he was looking down, he would be wanting to have more people like this person, more people who could provide good quality teaching, who could ensure that good quality teaching happens. This person has been fundamental in ensuring that it passes down to the next generation. So I want to thank that person and also congratulate them and respect them and remember her legacy as well. The person who I'm talking about is Frances Elton, who we want to recognise. This is the award. Frances is unfortunately unable to come today. She's not well. So I did ask if she could send a video clip. And we will be giving the award to her, and then we'll film a little conversation with her when we give the awards, and we'll put that onto the website. But let's take a look at what Frances said when she found out she was going to receive the award. We could turn the lights off, please. Hello, everybody. Hello, members of the deaf community. Hello. So I'm Frances Elton. I'm disappointed I'm not able to come and join you today. I've got a dodgy leg, I can't walk at the moment, so it's a shame I can't be there. Disappointed not to see you all. So that's why we're filming instead. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to see it. I was surprised that the BDA gave me this award. I'm very proud. I appreciate it very much. It will be in my heart forever. I send my love. I mean, obviously the BDA is an organisation which is dear to me because of its support of the British deaf community. If we look back, worked hard, the BDA's worked very hard to support the deaf community. And a lot of the achievements we've had are because of that work. There's some very good memories. I hope there will be people in the next generations like me in the future who will be doing things. Enjoy yourselves at the AGM, the BDA's AGM today, and my best wishes to all of you.
Wanted to ask some additional questions outside of violence. So I've spoken with the board. So with the AGM we have formal side of business, and then we've had a number of workshops where we've been able to feedback and share information. I'm unsure, Terence, what questions you have. Is it one or four questions? I'm not sure if anyone else would like to ask questions. Okay, so we have questions from the audience. Do you have time for those now? We won't be having any further business this morning. Okay, so we have 3 questions from the audience. We are over time, so if you could keep to your questions. If you just want to line up at the right hand of the stage.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I have 2 questions in relation to the BDA. Personally, I want to say thank you to the old board and the BDA staff for their hard work. I know for the accounts there have been some questions, but I think there's lots of positives there. And it's great that we actually have money ongoing and money for the future, so thank you very much. In terms of the audited accounts, I know that we can't reject the audited accounts because they are but I thought there was an opportunity to formally adopt the accounts to see whether the members are happy or not. I don't know. I thought whether we adopt the accounts or not. The members don't vote. The accounts are presented. That's all that happens. Oh, I thought I thought maybe I'm. That was a deliberate attempt to try and fight me down. That's what we're going to do. That's one way. Obviously we can't decide on the accounts, but it's a way of thinking we're involved. If people think communications, if people think communications finished, then they go away happy. But I think it feels like we've had lots of information presented to us, but there hasn't really been a dialogue, and I don't know that that's good. In the minutes, it says that the BDA will change its constitution. I know that's not going to be happening today, but what's the plan? Will the members be involved in the workshops? I'm not clear what's happening. I wonder if you could explain that very step. In terms of our IDS, the Irish Deaf Society, they announced this week on Twitter that they may be closing in March, in 2 months, and I think it's important that we as the BDA write some letter for moral support and support their work. We know it's difficult times, but we obviously we can't offer finance, but it would be good for us to be able to offer some kind of support. I'm wondering if you're engaging in that. We'll have the workshops later this afternoon. I had some questions in relation to the workshops, so there are quite a lot of themes of true interest, but what's important to me is to know what the new board's vision is, because that will help me engage in the workshops. What's the point in us engaging in workshops which take us in a direction which is different from the current board's vision? So, for example, in terms of access to work, education, PIP, engagement with the government, what's been happening? Are we still engaged in those campaigns? We don't seem to have much information. It would be useful for us to have that and have information shared. I don't know, and again, it's not a criticism of the board, and I know communication is not necessarily easy in the 21st century, but I'm wondering, will you communicate with us before we engage in the workshops? The question for me is whether we're putting the cart before the horse or not. Many of the workshops, if I give an example, a football example at the moment, with Arsenal and Spurs. Spurs 3-1, I don't know you're an Arsenal fan, but anyway. So if you think about, you have two different camps, where the board are maybe wanting to have a new stadium or new training grounds, and the supporters are wanting to have they have different priorities. So, although it's a football example, we all know that, so the question is, what's our shopping list? And, how can the BDA afford that? I think that's a big dilemma before. I know the motion for when we saw lots of things, often we knew that, we couldn't afford things, so people wanted to support motions, but it's kind of like, well, we don't have the money to do it. If we talk about education, that is a very broad sector. What are we talking about? In what example? We need to have things which are time limited and achievable. If all members paid £15 and we have 3,000 members, that gives us another £45,000 in our coffers. That would then pay for research into education potentially. That's an example. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have taken notes of your points and questions. So some of the answers you will find in the workshops to be held later today. Some of those questions or points I will come back to you for further information about before the posting responsibility. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Michael. Just briefly I'll say, I think altogether there's one proposal, but I'm not sure whether this will be something that's discussed here in the workshop. A few weeks ago, in Gibraltar, there was the Disability Act 2017 that passed in Gibraltar in the island, which is just near to Spain. And so they have BSL already, but I'm just wondering, was the BDA involved in that or not? Secondly, there are lots of deaf children who live in Gibraltar at the moment. Last year, I was engaged in some discussions about whether the BDA should be involved, and I think the BDA youth were wanting to be involved, but I'm not sure whether there is a policy or not and how they can be involved, whether we need to create a policy. In terms of cooperative work, the Gibraltar Deaf Association, along with other deaf associations, are creating new, should we have new policies on British overseas territories. Is that something that we need to focus on? And maybe is that something that the members need to vote as well? That's just a summary of my thoughts.
So your first 2 points can be proposed in the workshop. The purpose of the workshop is that we want to hear from you what your thoughts are, what should the BDA go in the future. We don't want that to come from the board, we want that to come from you. And as Chloe said, sometimes you have ideas, we can't afford them, we're actually in a situation. Today is the members' conference, and you've got the opportunity to tell us what you want, and we can make notes of those activities. Then your third point, you mentioned policy for overseas territories. That's what I need to check with David. That's that is a David. The BDA, we don't have an overseas territories policy. So we have membership with the EUD and other organisations such as that, but we don't have an overseas territories policy. My name is Gloria Bowen, and I'm not criticising the BDA at all. The BDA, it's dear to my heart, they do some fantastic work. They're very, very important to me, but there are some disclaimers, and please don't take this as personal criticism. The information that we've seen from the BDA this year has been very limited. I've struggled to access the information, and I did get there finally. And I think they're a new board, so I understand things are, in early days. But it's so important that we receive this information at much earlier points. Because the BDA is the only organisation for deaf people, for the deaf community. We're all aware that the government's not interested in our cause. And it's so important going forward that we do make people aware of us and our work. Secondly, in terms of fundraising and our finances and the projects we run, but having looked at the pie chart, and there's a fantastic piece of work there for children and young people, but what about older people and with the ageing population? And I understand the projects it's there, but it's so important that we do consider the needs of abnormal people as the wider deaf community. So I leave that for your consideration. My heart is with you, and we're not fighting this cause alone. We are here behind you with our support. So please do contact us. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Gloria. We'll make note of your
Hello again, everyone. First I'd like to really congratulate Gloria. She always comes to the BDA without fail. She's been a die-hard supporter of BDA. She should probably get an award for being the most regular attendee. Great woman and a very good heart. And I know that the BDA is in her heart completely. I've been less consistent than her, for sure. It's great to see so many people here, and I know that there may be people watching the live stream as well, but I'm a little bit disappointed. Because again, I feel like there's been a dearth of information. I thought we'd agreed before that we would have the AG in the afternoon to give enough time for people to come. I know that there isn't good representation. So then you've moved, the person who's saying, Murray has moved to Wales, so he's not that far. Oh, you're a business person, that's different, sorry. What about the members? Where are our chance to talk? I've looked at the papers, but where is our opportunity to debate and challenge things? It feels to me like this isn't the right structure. I've seen the workshops and the videos, and you're saying you can go to the workshops, but it seems like each workshop has a maximum of 30 in it, and some of them will have very important effects on us going forward. So I know the board can decide about the accounts and everything, but it means that we're not involved. It's just kind of really a lack of participation. But, do you need us? Do you need us to be involved or not? That's one of the things that concerns me. Money, I think, is still important. I'm really interested to know what the vision is, and I think that that's not clear. I think in the AGM, It feels like that was 2 years ago when we were talking about the future. We need to have the AGM and awards, which is not really part of the AGM, and then we need to have an open discussion so that the members can talk about the issues which are of their concern. So you can kind of get the legal things out of the way. You know, some people weren't involved in the board activity that happened in 2017, 2016, whatever. So it feels like this is a very kind of unuseful format. I know that you need to do some of these things legally, but I mean, I do have some disappointments. Last year that you said that there would be regular updates, and it doesn't seem to, there has been from the board. So I mean, maybe that's separate, that's not to do with the AGM, but I'm still not sure if this is the AGM or something different. I mean, I feel like this, I don't know, consultation opportunity is something different, and having a chance to talk or whatever isn't happening. The workshop seems to be limited, and they're not fit for purpose in terms of changing the agenda. They don't seem to be timely. So it'd be good to make sure that we have the AGM at a time where we can ensure more people come, and also that there's more meaningful engagement with the membership. Thank you.
We have made space for a large audience, but your tenants will be limited. So we're using this room and a room next door for the workshops, but your fees will be limited. Morning should be structured, so that will be something we will discuss further. Item 30, please on.
Hello everybody, it's me again. I realised in my haste I forgot to introduce who I am. My name's Angela. I'm from the Isle of Wight. I would hope that the BDA gives us more time for the members. I know last year I asked him for sure, and said please give us that opportunity. We were promised that it would happen this year. This year it doesn't seem to have happened, but again, I mean, it's easy for us to just kind of offload and be critical. I don't think that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to work together. And I'm hoping that the BDA will listen to the members. I mean, at the moment, just looking in the room, I'm like, where are the older people? Terry Riley's obviously responded immediately, as we would expect. But, you know, I'm just thinking, where are the older people? Most of the people I see, maybe, you know, I'm 50, I can see people of my age and younger, but where are we valuing, oh, you as well, maybe, of course. So are we valuing our older members, the older people, you know, if we're coming here today, they can advise us on what they've been through. We can learn from their wisdom and pass that on to the next generation, but I feel like we're losing that valuable knowledge repository. There's such a focus on the youth, and I'm not saying that that's fine, but what about people who are 40 or 50 years old or older? It seems to be a gap, and how we can pass that knowledge on. I'm happy to be involved, happy to make sure that we have active involvement, and you know, I want to make sure that we're able to support the BDA to grow in the future.
Thank you, Angela. The report now specifically specifies in terms of broadening our spectrum. But I think you might have upset me. Shut up, what's happening in London? So maybe you might need to have a conversation later so I encourage their idea. So our last person then, can I go to you?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Murray Holmes, from Scotland. Just a brief point, I'm not going to give my story. But in terms of this AGM, we've heard the figures. You know, we won't get an opportunity to adopt them, but we've heard the figures. But our response, you know, the people who are responsible are the auditors, and the auditors don't appear to be here this morning. I thought it's a legal requirement to make sure the appointed auditors were present and that the AGM appoints the auditors.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just having a brief conversation about who would be the right person to answer this question. So, Dominic's going to.
Just in response to Larry's point, normally the board will approve the auditors, will ask the members to accept or adopt the proposed auditor, and so I have to apologise for that. That's something that I overlooked, and I will remember for next year unless you're wanting to very quickly adopt the proposed auditors. It's HW Fletcher. We've used them for a number of years. They're very good, they're very supportive, they're fully cognizant of the organisation and they understand the pension liabilities. They've helped the BDA understand how they can manage the pension liability reasonably over a number of years. So I will propose that we still use HW Fletcher. Are we happy to adopt that here at the AGM? If we could have a show of hands, please. So that's I would just like to apologise for oversight and I'll make sure it's formally listed in the agenda. An agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Dominic, and thank you for adopting the report, financial report for the proposed auditors. Okay, so moving on. So this year the AGM is taking place in Birmingham. And we are next speaker to a nice picture meeting.
Hello everybody, my name is Sarah Lawrence. I'm from Wales. We had some discussions in our region. We'll have the AGM, but we will also have a conference. We're going to have a weekend event. So we'll have the conference in the end. We haven't confirmed the venue yet. But I look forward to seeing you. You can have Welsh cakes. We'll send the letters out, everybody.
Okay, so if you want to know more about Glenshire, please do look at the BDA website. I promise to keep that updated. We're just in the process of finalising our plans, but they will be on their EBSL and in the written form. Okay, so we're now at the close of the. Oh, just beforehand, we just want to thank you all as members for attendance and your ongoing support of BDA. We would also like to thank our staff for all their hard work in supporting events and other activities. We'd also like to thank the new board for their support and participation in their respective activities. And we also want to thank Leslie. If you'd like to come from Leslie, come on. Please come. Alexis, sorry. So Alexis plans the majority of this and Christine stays in the head office. Alexis knows what their people want, where they want it, the best venues. And so, like for instance, the MAC, people when they arrived this morning have commented on how they like the building and the venues, so let's thank you, Alexis, for support. And also in terms of the park run, Park Hall, which is a really good opportunity. You can especially add how and why Bob is high up on the agenda. So thank you for organising the park run. And in addition, all the workshops and activities taking place today. So the floor body and the support has support. And I hope you can join us in that. close of the AGM, I want to note and store Marshall come up and Paddy Ladd for their workshop. So if you just give us a few moments for us to change over the slides, etc., then we'll be with us shortly. Just while the technology
That's good. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Maybe I'm not stamping on the floor. No. If I could draw your attention to the front. If we're ready, if you could take your seats, please, and get those around you to also take their seats. Let's get people's attention to the front. If we're ready. And now I need to get the speaker ready. Paddy? Is Robert Adam also here? Hopefully you're all feeling better. You've relieved yourself, emptied your bladder, enjoyed the refreshments. Hopefully you're delighted for the, very excited for the next part of the conference. My name's Dawn Marshall. I'm from Newcastle. Do we have other Newcastle people here? Excellent. Good to see you here. Some of you may wonder, what do we mean by a mission reboot? What's that for? The new board, we know that the previous board have worked very hard through some trying times financially and have really shored up the BDA. So the new board of trustees inherited a much more positive situation. Their focus was on the financial issues and the pension fund, obviously. Our focus can now be on thinking about what do we want for the future. So, you know, we want to hit the start button again and see where we may lead. Obviously, we need your help. How can we move forwards? Where should we move forwards to? So we thought we'd ask Paddy, Dr. Paddy Ladd. He previously worked at Bristol University at the Centre for Deaf Studies. You may be familiar with the book Understanding Deaf Culture. We have a picture of it on the slide. In Search of Deafhood. How many of you have read it? Very good job. Some not yet, it seems. But he wants to, we invited him to explain the context of the British Deaf Association. Why are we here? And we think that will help us in thinking about what the future may bring. So we're delighted to invite you to the stage. Welcome, Paddy. Oh. Hello, everyone. You can move on to the next slide. Oh, no, hold on. So, I've been told that I have less time than I anticipated because we took more time this morning. I think that'll be quite difficult because I was hoping to take my time and have a good rapport with the audience, but I think that'll be less I'm less able to do that, and I want to make sure that I meet your needs, but I don't want to have to reduce some of the content, so it might be a bit tricky. I know that we have some people watching from the comfort of their living room via the live stream. So hello! Everybody says hello to you. You're lucky that you're able to... Hello? We're showing the audience. Welcome from the audience. You're lucky because you can watch from the comfort of your own living room, having a cuppa and a fag. Those of us who indulge in those things are envious of you. I do want to take some time, rather than just giving us a whistle-stop tour of why we're here. We know it's very heartfelt for me to be asked, but also I'm slightly nervous to talk about this subject too. I've talked about deafhood internationally, but this is maybe a different topic for me. So what's my goal is, I will be talking about deafhood in my workshop later, but so my job really is to enthuse you all so that you're ready for this afternoon, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. The first thing I would say, as people have said already, thank you very much for coming. We know that people care for the BDA and they care enough this morning to come here, to be here, to stand up, to make contributions. Thank you very much for that. It's important that we recognise that. Our aim is to persuade other deaf people out there to also care for the BDA. How do we achieve that is the question we're ostensibly asking. As we're getting old, I mean some of us are getting old, you know, and we move on to, we pass away or whatever, we need to pass things on to the next generation. How are we able to ensure that deaf people out there develop a sense of belonging and pride of the BDA? How do we get the BDA into their hearts? What is it that will entice them in? And I can't answer that question, but maybe I can raise a few flags, highlight a few issues which are worth us considering or discussing. So I would say the first thing is, if we're thinking about deafhood and becoming ourselves as deaf people, we can't fully embrace our identity if we don't know our history. If you don't know the history of women as a woman, if you don't know your history of black people as a black person, then you can't realise who you are and the tradition on whose shoulders you stand. And as deaf people, we need to be able to look back and understand on whose shoulders we stand and become larger than the small person we imagine ourselves to be. Some of these things may be things that you've glossed over, but hopefully for younger people here today as well, you'll find it inspiring. This is a snapshot of and one person's view of the last 40 years. Obviously there'll be many different perspectives, and one could talk for hours about the history of the BDA, but I'm just picking a few things which I think are important. I respect other perspectives and other values, but of course, as the person who's standing here, I will give you my own. The BDA was established principally because of concerns about the education of deaf children. We know that oralism happened after Milan, and in 1889 there was a conference in Paris, an international conference, when Francis Meighen sailed over there and then came back by boat. He established the BDDA. Interesting that this year we have Paris is the venue for the WFD again, so that's serendipitous. We have an example from 1901 and 1902 of the petition that was sent to King Edward at the time, and it was ignored or brushed aside, but the BDA continued with its vision of trying to ensure that there was better education, and one of the things they also wanted to do was empower the community. There were many dark times that they went through, maybe for the 70 or 80 years of oralism, when it was acts of resistance and trying to maintain the community from being decimated. So this is the picture And you can see, if you look, on the top line, it says, "To His Most Gracious Majesty," and then it's a 4-page petition. There may be more pages, we've only been able to find 4 pages, and I would like to thank Janice Silo, a deaf woman, who found this. But it is beautiful. This is evidence of a deaf person who wrote. I mean, there's some errors in English there, so that probably tells us it was a second language English person. But we can also see some notes on the side there. You can see that handwritten note. For me, I'm always wondering, who wrote that person? Who wrote that note? And I asked a deaf historian, and they said, "Oh, that's actually probably the Chief Inspector of Schools of Britain, who would have handed that over to, or when His Majesty received it, it would have been passed over to him, and he would have made these notes, and then that seemed to have been the process." So, I mean, I actually brought it with me, so if you're wanting to look at it, then I can show it to you later. But there are 2,000 names who signed that petition at that time, and if you imagine, in 1901, it would have been very difficult to collect that number, but it was very clear that people talk about deaf people being healthy, intelligent, and the problems with oralism. So that is possibly one of the first campaigns that we can find. And again, we can see here. Sorry, I'm gonna walk to the screen to highlight some things. We can see these 2 lines that I pointed out. That says, so already we could see, merely being able to speak and understand a little spoken language with more or less uncertainty. Already we know that oralism had failed. People weren't able to speak necessarily very well, and it may be that they weren't able to develop their education. They weren't able to. Here it talks about a very partial development of mental health. So I was involved in 1974 in the BDA, at the Missioners' Times. Who remembers the Missioners? Anybody remember the Missioners? Maybe you must have been very small at the time. Murray, of course, can remember the Missioners. Who remembers Missioners here in the audience? Oh, not so many people. Do you remember? You're far too young. I think you weren't even twinkling in your father's eye back then. So many, seemingly few people, but in 1974, there were very few deaf professionals, maybe 5, maybe 10 of us in Britain, maybe 4 social workers, 4 or 5 teachers. There were very few job opportunities, and most of the people worked in factories or in manual work. So it was very difficult to challenge the hearing establishment, especially because English was such a powerful language, and education had failed these deaf people. So the Missioners ruled deaf people's lives in the Deaf Club, and also in sports and in the religious setting. I'm not here to criticise or tell of the woes of missioners. The missioners had to look after deaf people because at that time, we were fucked. That's the truth. There weren't good times. I mean, that's another story. There are many stories we could talk about bemoaning missioners, but I mean, if I describe a little bit about what it's like, at that time I was young. Back in 1974, I wasn't happy with the situation. There were other deaf people who were of similar philosophies, and we established the NUD, the National Union of the Deaf, which is a campaigning organisation. It was deaf run through the BDA at that time. When we were established as the NUD, the community was very angry with us. We experienced a lot of anger from community members. And the BDA and the BDA executive, which was controlled at that time by Hearing Missioners, were also very angry with us. It was a very tense time. I remember having to feel very brave to go into deaf clubs at the time because people would always have a go at us. So Alan Hayhurst, ABH, was a very good man. and he was involved in the BDA, and he had been involved in campaigning for deaf education and wanted campaigns to continue. He's always pictured in a very kind of delicate pose, but this was him mountaineering. He loved climbing, absolutely loved climbing. He established the Deaf Mountain Club, Mountaineers Club. He used to do, so he walked a tightrope supporting the NUD whilst also being actively involved in the BDA. He had heard that the NUD was established and organised a meeting in Carlisle, where the BDA was based at the time, and he wanted us to work together, but he needed that to happen in secret. Murray remembers, I can see. And that was very important, and I'll explain why, but this was a little bit clandestine in terms of the support that happened. He said he would support us, but he didn't want that to be openly known. And he gave us a stall at the Eastbourne Congress. It's the BDA conference in Eastbourne, 1977. We had a little stall. Oh, I don't know what we were thinking. People were saying, "What are you doing here? Shame on you." And we had to just sit there and really take it. There was lots of toing and froing and debate. I know in the evenings during the dance and the formal dinner we weren't allowed in. They said, "Oh, sorry, the tickets are sold out," which we knew wasn't true. We knew that there were tickets left. But those days, there was, you know, the power of the gatekeeper, the power of the person not letting you in. I mean, it was actively exercised. I'm sure you remember that was one of the ways that powers happened in the deaf community. It was a cultural thing, it was a way of controlling things. But it was things were hotly debated. It was a hot time. If we think about 1977, I mean, some of you are too young maybe. 77 was the year of the punks, rock music, and there was an awakening, and it felt like suddenly we were in multicolour. But when you walked into the BDA Congress, it was like being in the 1950s. All the missioners sat on stage, all in black and white. The deaf people who got up and spoke, got up and contributed to the conference, used speech and not sign language. It was really something that was back in the dark ages. So Alan Hayhurst and the NUD worked together, and it was fine for you to be a member of both organisations. That wasn't something that we objected to. The BDA worked in a much more prim and proper way. They had official delegations with governments, and the NUD was much more street campaigning. And we really needed both of those things, the stick and the carrot approach, to achieve our goals. Some of you may not have seen the Deaf Liberation book. We see a photo of that on the slides, but you can see at the top there's a puppeteer, and beneath you see the deaf children where the puppet strings go to the mouths of the deaf children. And we used, the NUD was really trying to open the door so that we could actually, the campaigning that happened at a grassroots level sometimes opened the door, and then you had a much better engagement, a civil engagement in the BDA. So we needed to have both of these approaches. In 1977, as you said, I think you remember, you were involved in the Conrad report. This is also around the time where we had the Conrad research project, and it was clear that oralism was failing. So we had the NUD and the BDA and the Conrad report, and this kind of tripartite approach actually worked very well in terms of bringing about change. We then saw in the 80s Alan Hayhurst retired. He had dreams of having a BSL dictionary that could be used for teaching, etc. And so he set up, he wanted to teach sign language, so he engaged with Durham University, and as we know the Francis's introduction, Dr. Miles worked there. We also had Arthur Verney, who took over in terms of the BDA. He was a great guy. I mean, really, I loved his sign name as well, Arthur Verney. I don't know why, because, you know, that was his identity. He grew up with that sign name, the Deaf Club gave him that name, and he was like, that's who I identify as. But he was brought in by the BDA, and he employed myself and Lillian Lawson. We were the first admin officers who worked for the BDA at that time. So we saw change in 1981, but they were good times. we saw the BDA manifesto, and that was the first time we saw a well-articulated vision, and I'll show you what that looked like as well. And we started to see much more effective political campaigning at political conferences, in Parliament, at political conferences. We started to see interpreters on stage. At by-elections, deaf people would go and ask representatives questions, interpreters there to provide access. So we started to see a big shift in terms of political campaigning for the BDA. By 1985, in Manchester, we know that the Milan conference, the ICED, the conference that occurred in Milan, the ICED, had continued to be delivered. And so because it was happening in Manchester, rally was organised. We made the 6 o'clock news, which was a big thing to do at the time, because we were deaf people campaigning against the conference, the education conference. And this is what the 1982 manifesto looked like. Now, who's seen that before? Showing your age now if you put your hand up. But that was a powerful time. I mean, at least that's how I remember it. I hope we all do that too. This was a statement to the world from the deaf community, and it moved away from the shackles of being controlled by missionaries. This was our vision for ourselves. But we know that the board was very angry with some of these events. They were very disgruntled. And there were deaf people in the executive who were equally angry. The missionaries in some ways were disgruntled, but most of the ire was from the deaf board members. Arthur Burney was sacked. And that was an amazing thing. That created a terrible backlash in the deaf community because the BDA had been more political, that engaged deaf members, and membership blossomed. I know that Doug, Wendy Daunt, a number of other people were actively involved and enjoyed the politics, and they felt that there was a really good rapport and the BDA was moving forwards. When Arthur Burney was sacked, we really felt that we had to get together and try to make sure that the BDA didn't change its vision. The BDA in the Northwest had an active involvement, and there were other regions as well. Then in the Torquay conference in 1983, all of the speakers were deaf. Gloria Bullen was one of them, Clark Denmark also, a person from America attended too, that is correct, he said his name. That was the first time we had 3 deaf speakers at any BDA Congress. The AGM was highly contested. The hearing chair was forced out. He was resigned, very much like football managers, a euphemism, and so at least that's my interpretation of that. Euphemistically, he resigned, but he was forced out, and that's when we had Jock Young become the first deaf chair of the BDA. Those were very important times in terms of deaf history. Things were really moving and shaking. It really was a moment when deaf people were taking power for themselves, and we had one of us in control. Previously, we had coders as well who were involved, who respected us. They had deaf parents, they understood the deaf community. So that's what happened. It's a big moment in deaf history. In 1983, we saw other changes in the world. The BDA went to the WFD. Oh my goodness, I remember going with Murray. It's shocking, you wouldn't believe it. I remember going in and just watching it. I wasn't the official delegate at the time, so I was just observing what happened. You saw deaf people in the audience, and you saw deaf people, hearing people on stage. And the manipulation that occurred really was mind-numbing. You saw people talking, and then people being told off and not signed. You know, lots of political things happened through speech to try and make sure deaf people weren't in power, and they were controlled by these theories. It was really awful. Lisa Kalpanen from Finland and I were clear that we had to change this situation. It was appalling. When I flew back to England, I had some discussions saying that things had to change, also with Lisa Kalpanen as well. And that's when we orchestrated the move to Finland. It was very hard to remove that organisation from Italy. It had been founded there, its legal seat was there, and we really needed to move it to Finland, and that's of course where the WFT has been based ever since. And the BDA was a fund principle in making sure that move happened. So well done for the BDA for being involved in those efforts. It's something we can be very proud of. In 1988, we saw the recognition of sign language on an EU level. I think at that time it had a different name. It wasn't called the EU. I mean, whether that was strong recognition or not, it was something that was just, you know, empty words. But we think 1988 is a long time ago. And then there are different ways to do politics as well, right? Somebody may remember that. I think you're looking very prim and proper there in that photo. Very well behaved. We picked Princess Diana for political reasons. Arthur Burney picked her. I wanted to show you a picture of the 1990 launch of the BSL Dictionary of Brighton, but I couldn't find that example. But she launched the BSL Dictionary using British Sign Language. And that was a political statement. That black tone, and the introduction was written by Princess Diana. She wrote that. So it was political. So it was a very clever endorsement from the establishment. But I suppose my number one achievement, or the number one achievement I would say, is deaf television. And again, it happened because the NUD started campaigning and they wanted the BBC to have a programme which was launched, The Sign of Life, and that was in 1979, which, oh my goodness, is 40 years ago. SHIT. And, I mean, you know, it was hard work. It was on BBC Two, I remember it happening. At the same time as the World Cup final, so that wasn't so good in terms of programming. And again, we sat down with the BDA and we wanted to make sure that there was more television. We decided it was best to actually have a separate organisation out with the BDA and the NUD. And so we set up, but the BDA really ran it, although it had a different name. That was named the Deaf Broadcasting Campaign, and many of you I know were involved in that. And campaigned for the BBC. We had two public figures from the NUD and from the BDA. And I'll show you a photo of some of the campaigns that happened. And that culminated in the establishment of See Here in 1981. And then other channels followed suit. And we saw a blossoming of BSL Media, and now of course we have BSL Zone as well. And all of that stemmed from those conversations. So we've achieved a lot. But again, in terms of subtitles, we had the law passed in 1995, I think. And it's 95% subtitles with 5% of in-vision or sign language on television. And that was something, that Communications Act was something that the DBC, the Deaf Broadcasting Campaign, campaigned for. You know, campaigning can change the world. There are a variety of different ways of doing campaigning, but, you know, it can change the world. And what did that campaign look like? This is an example. This was the Signs of Life, as discussed in the Signs of Life broadcast. The reason I'm showing this photo is because I want to pay my respect to Eddie, who is here in the photo. I know he's passed. I think he passed last year. And he produced our NUD programme. And then we campaigned, and he said, I will be involved in See Here, and production of See Here. So it was also, I mean, see, I'm not going to lie, I had arguments with him, but he was an ally. And even at his funeral, he said, please don't give flowers, give money to the BDA. So, you know, right to the end, he was an ally for us. So that's a photo of the discussions that we had. And what did the campaign look like? Well, here we see the DBC. The guy with the white hair, who's that? Does anybody recognise you? Yeah, recognise? Yes, Doctor Who. The actor who was playing Doctor Who at the time. We went to number 10 Downing Street, delivered our petition. So, really to make sure that it was headline news. The next one is slightly more funny. I think it was at Christmas time, and people didn't have access, and so we created something. I think Austin probably could explain this better over a cup of tea or something, but there was a deaf Father Christmas who was signing in the television and somebody who was conducting it or something. And so that was some of the campaigning that happened. Have you taken a photo? Have you finished? Okay. On. So that's I don't want to, obviously I don't have enough time to go through all of the years, so let's jump on to the 90s. People were frustrated about what was happening, and again, the FDP was established, Federation of Deaf People. Who remembers the FDP? Yeah? And the aim was to improve education by getting British Sign Language recognised. And so we had the marches, the national marches. Hold on a moment. So the BDA agreed to be involved, and we had the marches. In 1999, we had the first march. Oh, lots of people there. How many people? Maybe a quarter of you. 2000 march, who was there? About a few more people. And then in 2003, we had nominal recognition. What can you do? And then we had the naughty boys and girls who blocked the road. Who was involved in blocking the road? Has anybody here? You were one of the robots? Very bad. Shame on you. Who else was there? Lying in the streets? Did you? You got the road? Wow. Jenny? I think it was a very brave move. But it was important. Deaf people were worried if they blocked the road outside Parliament and the police would come on and talk to them. And obviously that evoked quite a strong emotional response. Some people were arrested. We also had the Wolverhampton Six. I don't know if you remember that. But it is important for us to remember these events. These are some of the other campaigns we had. Where was the march? Oh. What number was the march? Sorry, I just want to check something. I wanted to show a film of the march because you'll be able to see what you look like when you're younger. So what about the challenges that we have nowadays? We know there's a decline of deaf clubs, a growth in social media, new oralism, with cochlear implants mainstreaming, global travel, volunteering abroad. And yet the irony that strikes me is there are many, many, many deaf professionals compared to my time. So there should be more talent than ever. In my time, any deaf person who could read a little bit of English could help because of how poorly the education system has served us. Now we have people who are well educated and have really good jobs. Surely we can do better. People maybe are focusing so much on their career and individual prospects rather than thinking about volunteering. People talk about their own rights, but what about the rights of deaf children? What about other people's rights in the community, in our community? And obviously the BDA is unique. People often like, oh well, there are other organisations as well. This BDA is one of many organisations. We are unique. And somehow we're not getting that message across properly. We're not getting it out there. People, it's just one of many organisations, as opposed to we are the organisation of the British deaf community. The BDA if the BDA is strong, the British deaf community fares well and is strong. Conversely, if we are weak, the British deaf community declines. So we have the reboot. I'm terrible at technology, which is the irony. If they picked the wrong person, I'm terrible at computers. I have very, very low skills. I'm really a Luddite. But we do need to stop and think about what is the big picture, what are we aiming for? When the BDA says, tell us what you want, but we've had those consultations year on year. We now need action. What are you doing about what members are telling you? People come to the conference, it's the same as the WFD, people attend the conferences, motions are passed, saying we want hearing parents of deaf children to have proper access to information, yada yada yada. Then people fly home and nothing happens and the cycle repeats. Now's the time for change. We, the BDA, are responsible for showing the deaf community our vision, tweaking the vision from the feedback that you get from people. The BDA has a responsibility to craft a vision and then make sure that it's something which is tweaked to suit the needs of the community. That will then be something that people can get on board with. So what is the BDA's vision? I mean, education, education, education. It was ever thus. I mean, it seems that there's infighting in the deaf community worse than it ever was. I mean, I don't want to analyse that today. We don't have time for my thoughts on that. And I'm as guilty as the next person. People not liking that person or this person or that deaf club or this deaf club. But maybe we need to forget those little arguments or internal arguments, but have some common purpose to work together on. Put up with our differences. I mean, some of those things, some of those arguments will never change. But we know deaf education and deaf children is important. We need to forget the disagreements we have with each other and think about supporting the next generation. It may have been that your times at deaf schools weren't bad. Even if they were an oral school, you were together with other deaf people. Now, deaf people are isolated in mainstream schools. I think it's now worse than it ever was. If you think, you've worked for 40 years, many of you maybe you've done well, but when we've seen the rise, and now is it the fall of the community? It's really sobering to think of that. What is the purpose of all of our campaigning? And I'll give you an awful example. Somebody in the audience was there. I had a deaf food workshop. Somebody was talking about their job in relation to deaf children. It was a social services related job. And they arrived at a house one day. And there was a boy, there was a deaf boy in the house who they were visiting, who was 15. And they were introduced to the parents, and it was just a house visit that you would expect. And they said, hi, and the boy. And they said, the boy's upstairs, and they went up to the boy's bedroom, opened the door, and kind of said hi to the boy. And the worker said, hi, I'm from social services. Just to see how your life is going. They asked the boy. And they said, how's school? What's it like in school? What's your experience? Do you have friends, a peer group? Do you go out and socialise? Are you engaged in sports? Asked a variety of different questions. And then they said, do you watch TV? And the boy said, no, I don't understand television. And the person said, but they have subtitles, right? You can turn on the subtitles. And I said, yeah, but I'm not allowed to watch. Sorry? Not allowed to watch? Why are you not allowed to watch? So, because the cochlear implant team have told my parents that I have to lip read the television. I kid you not. That is what the cochlear implant team said. And so they turn the subtitles on from the television. I mean, I'll give you a moment to digest that thought. That's happening in Britain today. And this is an example of something that's happening all over. The cochlear implant teams are nut jobs. This is happening to deaf children. So, let's forget the little fights that we have. How can we save the lives of these deaf children? I think I've finished that making the video back to work. But if we're thinking about the BDA at the moment, We've read through the information. We've got 44 members of staff. They're working quite hard in a variety of different projects, which seems to be spread very thin, I think. I mean, it's a lot of work compared to my time. Not admin that needs to happen. But there doesn't seem to be a strong relationship with the community. How do we develop the community and re-inspire the community? Put fire in their bellies. Often if you do a little bit of work and you change things in a small way, that can work over time, but now is not the time for that. We need a momentous change. We need a big thing which will attract and inspire people to join. Some of you may have know the campaign Spit the Dummy. You are a bad boy. It's John Smith. Yes, you stir it up. You know you do. Anyway. With their 10,000 likes, 10,000 likes, which still shows that deaf people have a passion for deaf children. That is proof, if it's needed, and we need to be able to garner that support. 2 years ago, we saw the BSL Act Scotland be approved. What the hell has been happening in the rest of the UK? Scotland is probably looking upon the rest of the UK with glee. How foolish the other nations of this country are. I've given you a snapshot of history. Hopefully it's been something which you enjoyed. But in the past, the BDA waited for the NUD, waited for the FDP, waited for Spit the Dummy. Now is the time for the BDA to take on that responsibility itself. March is a sexy and we need to march. That can quickly shake things up. It can quickly also get people excited again. Get that buzz. Feel that excitement. You know, even inspire, create, get emotional involvement. Get parents involved. Get other hearing allies involved. Get interpreters to volunteer. And we can see the public support we have. That is inspiring. If the BDA sets something up, then it will also get youth engagement as well. You can give out membership forms while you're there and increase membership. But we need something big, which we can facilitate that change upon. We can go on back. I mean, one of the things we also need is a festival at night. So you have a march. Probably in the marches before you had the march in Trafalgar Square, and once it was done, everybody went to a variety of different pubs, and suddenly all of that energy is diffused, and you don't have some central meeting place which maybe has performance. Hey, John Smith, you have your performance for free. I'm sure you'll do that without a fee. But that maintains that feeling, and we need that kind of nous to make sure that we get that feeling. There's a black female poet, Maya Angelou, who is a well-known quote, says, people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. In many ways, it doesn't matter what you say, people quickly forget that. But in a march, people remember the emotions it stirred. Okay, I'll stop now and move to the next one. In 2000, from I just want to say thank you very much, and also what you call Jerry Hansen, who made the film in 1999 as well. We'll watch the clip from the beginning, and you can maybe laugh at what you looked like back then.
Right, BSL, yeah!
10 million people who would be able to use sign language within society, and that would really make...
That's just by way of reminding you, right at the beginning of the film, you can actually see many of the faces. I think maybe you were 10 at the time, was it back then? But it's good to see, you know, the petition given to number 10. And also the vibe that was there at the time. If the younger deaf people who were involved in that march, you know, felt inspired. It was all inspired. I mean, that's my perspective anyway. So I will finish with the last few points. Just some of the observations that I have, hope you have enough time. Many people have brought up, you know, what are the BDA doing? And I think that is, I mean, I do feel that the same. The staff are working hard, but what's going on? So I, you know, would suggest, you know, for me, the website needs to be improved. Doesn't seem to be particularly accessible. Doesn't seem to be particularly attractive, at least from my way of thinking. Perhaps the staff should give a 5-minute BSL summary every month about what they've been doing. I mean, you know, it's a deaf way of doing things, rather than doing English and saying, oh, you know, I went to this meeting, this is what happened. That's the way of explaining stuff, so that people are like, oh, okay, wow, this has happened, that's interesting. And that also means that those deaf people who watch that thing will pass the message on, and that's the way of getting much more penetration to the community. I think it's, I mean, that's something in general, not just specifically the BDA. Deaf people maybe be involved in the committees, and when you ask people, so I'm sorry, I can't tell you, it's confidential. And I'm like, really? That doesn't really seem to follow our cultural rules of our community. What is that behaviour? Is that something to do with power, or looking down on people, or is something we learn from the missioners and still do ourselves? You know, why are we belittling people who are members of the community and not sharing information? And that's a way of getting people involved. Also, we need people to volunteer more. Everybody seems to be focusing on money. You know, nothing's for free. And obviously, you know, if you work, you know, 40 years on, we don't all work in factories anymore. Many of us have, and many where we can afford to do things for free and volunteer. But I'm talking generally rather than just the people in this room. I mean, you're here, so you obviously support the BDA because you're here. But I would say, if we look in Britain, some of our values have been lost. Maybe we need to go back to thinking collectively. And just to wrap up, obviously people want to go and have some lunch, get a bite to eat. I mean, I was mainstreamed. I met deaf, I came to the deaf community when I was 21, and the deaf community saved me. So I hope that we will now take on that responsibility of saving the next generation of deaf people, deaf children. And maybe you think, I'm not sure whether Paddy was worth saving. But seriously, on a serious note, we save deaf children. What's going to happen to these children in the future without us being there? Without the British Deaf Association, we won't have a deaf community, and they'll suffer. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paddy. That's amazing to know the history behind the beatdown. To summarise that in such a short time, but you did it. And I'm sure you do have some questions that you'd like to ask. So maybe I'll 2 questions from the audience, and then in the Saturday workshop we'll have the opportunity to ask further questions. And that will be your opportunity to contribute to the workshops which will take place after lunch. So I can see there's a couple of audience participants who would like to ask some questions. Thank you, Paddy. Wow. All inspiring. So my name's Kevin Buckle. I'm from London. I have one question for you, Paddy, which might shock you all a little. Back in Jeff McQuinn's time as CEO, I know some of you here maybe remember there was those quite large posters with the finger salute. Why was that? Do you remember them, Paddy? The idol? Where did you have posters in the written word, not particularly visual? This poster was visual, and why was that the case?
So he's very kind because he's passed me, an open goal. I mean, really, he knows the answer. He's being very cheeky. But it was a great poster. I will never forget the first time I saw that. It was not far from where we worked, Leslie, if you remember. One of the bridges. It was across the bridge. And I think the wording of the poster was, "What is the government's attitude to BSL?" And then it had the middle finger. And the point is, of course, that in the north, the sign for lazy. For lazy. So it was just a BSL pun in many ways. Very clever. I don't know who came up with the idea. Terry, do you remember whose idea, who had the idea for the landscape poster? With it was an advertising agency. Okay. Well, I mean, I hope you didn't pay too much for that, but that was money was considerable. Maybe we could sell that. Everybody could buy that and actually have it up in your home or on your car. You have a car sticker. Very good. But I think that kind of creativity. Thank you for bringing that back. That's a very good idea. That was a very easy goal to score. Thank you.
Paddy, that was a fantastic reminder of our history. When I came here this morning, I was a little bit deflated. There wasn't much momentum, enthusiasm. But Paddy's presentation, talking about the past, was now giving me the vibe to move forward. Social media generally, is so important. Deaf Facebook, Deafland, just as an example, has 10,000 members. The camps they hold the 50 plus groups, the number of people that attend. So how can we muster that enthusiasm for other organisations and membership groups to ensure the future of the BDA and the support that we need? So from the presentation Paddy spoke about, we can do that, it won't be easy. But it's about how we keep the BDA and the deaf community strong. And Paddy's been campaigning for many, many years with the NUD. Perhaps it needs to be reignited, I don't know, that's a question for thought.
I think if we think about, I mean, it's useful for us to, it's a useful contribution in terms of the internet. I mean, it's not fair to ask the BDA to take full responsibility for these things. Organising a march is a tireless exercise. It is, we have to think about what the aims are, and we have to make sure that they're focused. But really what I've given you is lots of food for thought, but that needs to be distilled down into achievable targets. Marches don't have to be about political aims. It could be, if we think about gay pride, it's a celebration. That energy and that enthusiasm is about bringing people together. And any political achievement is a bonus. So really that's the goal of the deaf community. Irish Pride organised the Pride March for ISL and the Irish deaf community. I'm Joseph. So that's a good example. But we know the BDA can't do everything, but the internet, Deafland, also means that people take responsibility to ensure they do things. Maybe that's a way of doing something regionally or organising something regionally. That could be, oh, John Smith's gone, but it could be something that, I mean, he could talk about his experience of having organised those things. So there are ways that they can be achieved. I mean, maybe we don't need the NUD with the internet now, or if the NUD or a like organisation were to exist, it would be internet-based now.
Thank you. I think what Joseph was just saying, it is really important because, you know, I'm sure we all felt a little deflated this morning. And the AGM is about business. The finances, looking back, talk about the activities of the board. But as a new board, we can't move forward without doing that work. So it's really good to hear that people are feeling inspired because now we can have the mission reboot and we can work together to do that. And I can hear your stomachs rumbling, so you all must be hungry now. So lunch is downstairs, so you can take yourselves downstairs and we'll be back at 2 o'clock for a pop start for the workshops. If you're in workshop 1, that's with me and we'll be talking about the BDA vision, our dreams and our aspirations that will be taking place in this room. Workshop 2 is in regards to youth, that will be taking place next door, directly next door outside this room, to right. Then there are other workshops, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and we will be swapping rooms and we'll make sure you're in the right place at the right time. So if you talk about youth next door, talk about the future of the BDA and our plans and aspirations, that's in this room. So please be back for 5 to 2, enjoy your lunch and enjoy the culture with each other. Thank you.
No. Oh.
what?
No, I have to shut down.
Oh, right. PDA, the welcome thing, just in the background there. First slide. Shoulder. And first slide is it? That's Paddy's. Yeah.